All right. So today is Thursday, April 18th, 2024, 12:26 p.m. I thought that it might be a constructive exercise for me to, instead of reading my capstone live, I record myself reading part of it. I almost never record myself because I'm gonna feel different about it every single day, you know. So it's only something I feel that is sort of, you know, somehow important enough that something about it can stay the same, and that is that about 7 years ago, I was writing final papers for my bachelor's degree um, in peace, security, and conflict resolution. And this isn't the last one. There was like three papers I was working on simultaneously that were like 30 pages each. And they were all due within like, you know, a week, 2 weeks of each other. I think this paper, it might have been that same time actually. It was one of the three. The one that I'm thinking of right now. I can't even remember what I wrote them on. So it's a good, it's I should brush up on this. I've been talking all day on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I was on YouTube. I'm gonna upload this to YouTube, but I think so if it works. Because apparently I have a program called iMovie on here, but you can't record with that, I don't think. You have to use Photo Booth, which is actually, I look kind of cute, but that's crazy. I just got out of the shower and I did like a very thorough scrub. So, um, but I have just 3 or 4 sections left. One, I probably could have benefited from like a little legend or something. 3, 4, 5. So there's and one of them is findings and conclusions. So there's 4 sections, which is not very impressive, I feel like, but there was just no way I was gonna write more. I mean, not really. It would have been stretching it too much. So, anyways, we've got background leading up to the Trail of Tears. Leadership, organization, nonviolent resistance, and then findings and conclusions. And so I think what's interesting about this is that I was reviewing literature that was way more comprehensive, and that um, it wasn't uh, a mission to personally develop, it was a mission to explain some occurrence, um, which did not, like, the way that it's been done is that, like, the primary authorship gets to speak in a way that is very unequivocal. um, and the papers come out feeling so compact, um, like, literally every single part is a part of what happened. But it's not how this is going to sound. This, based on the sections I just outlined, sounds more like several mini papers, right? I'm skipping the abstract and the overview, which I fit a lot into. But on the one hand, it seems like, oh, maybe it's because I'm being more vague. But actually, when it comes down to a term by term analysis, I think I have done more to define the words I'm using, rather than name a whole bunch of different interpersonal, outwardly, it's like, in some ways, if you're asking what happened and for a resolution, then especially if you're critiquing, or something that's old, you can't really do much if people are dead, right? You have to tell yourself what the right answer is. And so I think it doesn't sound as specific, which, in some ways, I think is interesting, because I think it's easier for a less educated person to read like this. But I think that, when I were younger, I'd be more like asking for specific people, specific time. I'd want everything like that. And interestingly, I feel like that's how I see things different. Like, what is the Trail of Tears? This is relating to what has been identified as a Cherokee movement. And I think it's very difficult to imagine what that looks like. So I feel sort of disassociated from this, but I am trying to examine it, and see why I don't relate to it, because I may. All right. From approximately the 1800s onward, the overarching American sentiment was that the Aborigine people would be much happier beyond the reach of white civilization, of which was rapidly overtaking them, because removal was perceived to merely be a matter of gathering up one's things and going. It was thought that they should be relocated beyond the civil state and in the wild where they belonged, Conkle. It is widely believed that the physical threat and subjugation of the Cherokee proliferated acculturation. Of all the tribes, the Cherokee were in closest proximity to the Europeans, prompting frequent alliances with the English in warfare, but they had also demonstrated a desire to remain at peace with the United States. In subscription to the colonial way, some members developed a written constitution with three branches of government, established their own police force, and moved away from the matrilineal homes. It is said that out of all the tribes, the Cherokee displayed the highest level of resistance, hybridity, and acculturation to the colonizers by editorializing, lobbying, petitioning, and mounting a formidable legal challenge to the ethnic cleansing campaign. Further, although all of the American tribes experienced subversion during the colonialization, the Cherokee are considered to have suffered the most through genocidal removal campaigns. The horrific violence began with the Yamasee War, 1715 to 1717, of which spurred the Cherokee cycle of reconfiguring their indigenous identities to align with the colonial environment. The Shatter Zone was marked by slavery, colonialism, and ethnogenesis. Hickson. The Cherokee suffered great losses before their attempt at a nonviolent resistance. From 1700 to 1775, their population was halved by smallpox and other diseases. Then there was the Cherokee War that ensued in 1758 to 1761 due to settler encroachment. Despite the British being allies, settlers built new homes and towns on Cherokee lands and hunting grounds. The Cherokee were left starving and homeless by the scorched earth campaigns waged by the colonial whites, with many settlers and British officials calling for extermination. It was the Cherokees' readiness to reach out from their side that made a temporary peace possible. Hickson. The Cherokee suffered further devastating losses in the American Revolution when they had joined the Shawnee and British in resistance. American settlers vowed to carry fire and sword into the very bowels of their country. Hickson. In Carolina, American patriots issued a call for Cherokee genocide to put an end to ambivalent relations on the borderlands. Indiscriminate ethnic violence raged, and as Indian prisoners brought no reward, Americans killed them for their scalps, which could be redeemed for cash. Backed by the British, the Cherokee waged an indiscriminate conflict with the settlers throughout the Revolutionary War. In 1776, raids against borderland settlements carried out by young Cherokee warriors provided the moment that many Carolinians had been awaiting to unleash an indiscriminate campaign of their own. The man who immortalized the phrase merciless Indian savages, the Virginian Thomas Jefferson, called for the Cherokees to be driven beyond the Mississippi. Hickson. By the end of the American Revolution, the Cherokee population had dropped to some 10,000 to 15,000, and they had lost 3/4 of their homelands and hunting grounds and more than half of their villages. Hickson. In 1785, the Cherokee signed a treaty at Hopewell, South Carolina, establishing a western boundary. It has been said that the chiefs at the time were not very critical judges of the language of the treaty, likely due to the interpretation they received. The treaty is introduced with the declaration that the commissioners plenipotentiary of the United States give peace to all the Cherokees and receive them into the favor and protection of the United States of America on the following conditions, of which the third articles states that the Cherokee acknowledge to being under the protection of the U.S. and no other state. Porter. Stipulations such as this were historically found throughout much of Great Britain's colonial missions. This treaty would be remembered as the last time the U.S. poised themselves to negotiate peace with the Cherokee. The Cherokee people called the treaty talking leaves because to them it didn't hold water. However, most moved deeper into the Appalachian Hills and rebuilt anyway. Once there, they began to thrive again, but squatter and missionary invasions followed, backed by the Jefferson administration, which took additional land cessions in Treaty of 1804 and 1806. Next, the American victory in the War of 1812 eroded the ambivalence toward the indigenous people and paved the way for the Indian removal campaign. John C. Calhoun, whose grandfather died in a Cherokee raid, declared from their win that our views of their interest and not their own ought to govern them. In 1824, Calhoun placed the new Office of Indian Affairs under his supervision, of which was within the Department of War. In 1829, Hickson. In 1829, gold was discovered in the Appalachians of Georgia, where the Cherokee resided. The opportunity for easy money was enticing to many, drawing a sudden influx of miners into the Cherokee Nation. It was known even at the time as the Great Intrusion. As a result of the new majority, more oppressive laws were passed by the state and nation, commandeering the land from the Cherokee and giving it away to colonists in lotteries. In the Supreme Court case, Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, a ruling was made by presiding Chief Justice John Marshall against the state of Georgia, but neither the state nor Jackson would abide by it. In that same vein, when in 1835 a small fraction succumbed to the pressures of the state and signed the Treaty of New Okata, the Cherokee's sacred land was considered relinquished. This is despite a major uproar amongst the Cherokee who petitioned against it and denounced the supporters as traitors. The federal government didn't care that the signatories weren't authorized nor of legitimate representation of the Cherokee people. President Jackson signed the treaty anyway, but it is said to have only been ratified by a single vote. This would be the final land cession. The treaty gave the Cherokee a 2-year grace period to vacate the state. Chief John Ross protested with a letter to the Senate and House of Representatives. We are denationalized. We are disfranchised. We are deprived of membership in the human family. We have neither land nor home nor resting place that can be called our own. Sadly, his plea fell on deaf ears, but the Cherokee were not of the mind to leave voluntarily. When they did not, Jackson handpicked successor Martin Van Buren dispatched federal troops who rounded up the Cherokee at bayonet point and put them in stockades. By mid-June 1838, the general in charge of the Georgia militia proudly reported that not a single Cherokee remained in the state except as prisoners. Hickson. This would come to be known as the Trail of Tears, where a minimum of 4,000 and possibly as many as 8,000 of some 15,000 to 18,000 Cherokee who were removed died in the stockades or en route. At every step of their long journey to the Indian Territory, the Cherokee were robbed and cheated by contractors, lawyers, agents, speculators, anyone wielding local police power. Hickson. Lacking food, shelter, medicine, and other provisions, the Cherokee perished in droves. Written by Dylan Threadgill. I swear, couldn't catch a break. I don't know. I'm like, you don't understand though, because I actually sit there for so long, like, so long. And like, I'll write a word and I take it out and I put another word in and I take it out. Or I can usually go like maybe a sentence or two at a time. Sometimes I'll get the idea of what like a paragraph next to another paragraph will look like, or something like that. For instance, the section I just read, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is 11 paragraphs. So, I don't know, it's hard thinking about sections, pages, things like that. Seems like sections should be longer, but personally, there might have been like an event, 1 or 2 events that I read that I didn't include because I couldn't see what that meant in relation to other people. I know I just said this is like supposed to be, but yeah, a lot of very specific, like so many things. This happened, this happened. Like I must have listed like what, 10 things or something, and that within the Trail of Tears, it's a lot. And I read so many pages to get that perspective that I just sort of barely think you can follow sentence to sentence, but barely. It's a lot. So next up is leadership. Maybe I should try and upload this first and see if it works, because we're at 23 minutes. Yay. Believe it or not, that one section, what? I mean, it took like 10 minutes? I don't know.